Oh, guys, I've got to click record there. Hey everyone, my name is BJ Malenga. I am the CEO at the Purposeful Project. We've spent the last 2 weeks delving into topics that we felt were important for entrepreneurs to know. This topic was requested heavily by the survey we ran last month around how to work with influencers, how to set an influencer strategy, and how to have key things to support you and your business as you try to grow. In today's conversation, we've got both Max and Chloe who run businesses, but also kind of fall underneath the influencer category. I'd call them hybrids, where they actually have the ability to kind of do stuff in commerce, but they also understand the value of their platform. I'm looking forward to getting both of them to share their story and give you guys pointers on what they've learned on their journey thus far, topics and tips that they have when they think about influencer strategy for their business, but also when brands approach them. And furthermore, I will be doing an overlay to wrap up with tips and tricks that I've learned from having my own agency. Without further ado, I'm going to get Max to come up on the stage and get him to kind of share his story and share his tips. So Max, if you'd like to come up, we'd love to have you on.
Awesome. 2 seconds, just setting up the video.
All right, then.
I think are we on?
Yeah, we're on. Take it away.
Go. Awesome. So hi, everyone. My name's Max. I'm 26 years old and I'm a social media influencer and entrepreneur. I've only been in the influencer space probably about 12 months or so, but I have learned quite a lot since being in the space. I've had a passion for cooking since probably the age of 3 or even 4 years old, and I really wanted to share that passion with other people. So after losing my job and being made redundant in the first lockdown, I decided to join TikTok with the goal to make healthy living easy, enjoyable, and sustainable for everyone. And since starting TikTok, I've gone from 0 followers to 1.8 million followers in the space of just over 12 months and worked with a number of large brands such as Gymshark, Gordon Ramsay, Califia Farms, My Protein, TikTok themselves, and more recently, the Arnold Sports Festival. Now, the Purposeful Project kindly asked me to join the panel today to share some tips and insights on how to work with influencers like me in business. So I thought a good place to start would be to discuss what mistakes I often see when businesses approach influencers for campaigns. Now, I often see a lot of mistakes, but some of them are more common than others. One of the most common things that I see is copy and pasted messages. So I've literally had times where I've received messages from businesses and they haven't even bothered to change the name on the message. So starting off a message saying, "Hi, Jess," when my name is Max really isn't a good start. Businesses contacting influencers when their products or services are completely irrelevant to the business's audience. So obviously my audience is sort of food and healthy living based or healthy lifestyle based. So approaching me if you're a sofa company would obviously be a waste of time and it's not really beneficial for the influencer or the business. Another one would be either having no campaign brief put together or a really loose campaign brief put together. So it just doesn't come across very professional, and influencers who have a large audience will typically have like a manager like I do who deals with the campaigns on their behalf. So having an unprofessional brief that isn't put together well will likely cause you to miss out on opportunities, as they'll likely be less interested in what you have to say if you're not coming across in a professional manner. Another one would be not giving influencers creative freedom. This is a big one for me and what I've experienced more recently. So the influencer is the one that will know what content or videos will provide the most value for the audience and what sort of style of videos work well for their own audience. So not giving them the creative freedom can affect the returns for the company and obviously the results of the campaign. And finally, not doing your research into the influencer themselves before approaching them. I think this is really important. So doing your actual research on the influencer to see what their target audience is, what their engagement is like, and what products or services would fit well within their niche. Influencers can have a really, really large audience, but their engagement on their post might be quite low. So that would be something to consider. So yeah, moving on, I thought it would also be useful to discuss some pros and cons of working with influencers. There's plenty of pros, so we'll start with those first. So working with influencers can help you really reach a specific target audience. So obviously mine is food and healthy lifestyle focused, And that's a really specific niche that if your product fits within that, then it's more than likely the results of the campaign will be effective or will be positive. The influencers also have more of a personal connection with the target audience as well. You've probably seen like random Facebook ads pop up on your feed. Obviously, there's normally a nice video or some nice content to go with that. You don't really have like a personal connection there. So I think it's really good that influencers have more of a personal connection with their audience. This can also help with building trust within the brand as well. If you've got, I don't know, like a large celebrity or a large influencer that's endorsing your product or showing that they believe in the product, this can really help in building trust with a brand, especially helpful if you're a new startup and there isn't really much brand awareness there at the start. It's also quite cost effective in some cases compared to other forms of marketing. Good influencers will have an audience that trusts them themselves. And not only that, compared to other forms of marketing or some forms of marketing, you can get analytics on the post performance and return on investment through the use of trackable links and discount codes. And another thing as well, the final thing on the pro side of things is the business and the marketing department themselves don't actually have to spend the time or money creating the content, as the influencer is going to do all of this for you. So yeah, that's pretty much it on the pro side of things. Moving on to the cons. In some cases, influencers or influencers' audiences can feel like they're being sold to. And this really can have a negative impact to the influencer and the brand. So that would be something to consider. Working with the wrong influencer can obviously be harmful to the brand and the business. Another really important one is following the FTC guidelines. So there's certain guidelines that you need to follow. As an example, having like ad at the start of the caption when posting a video. It's really important to follow these. So when working with influencers, make sure that you've got all of that in place. Another con or sort of slightly negative thing that I found is doing short-term one-off posts. So I found just doing a one-off post doesn't really build much trust with the brand and their audience. If, say, I'm an influencer and I just do one post about a random brand that I've never spoken about, and then that's it, they never hear from me about that brand again, then it's likely that's going to be quite ineffective. And finally, it is, same as most things, it is quite high risk and there is no guarantee with it. But yeah, I'd say that's it on the pros and cons side of things. But looking on or moving on and sort of wrapping things up, I just wanted to share some tips on engaging with influencers and people like me in an influencer marketing campaign. So the first one would be to do your research. The second one would be to take time crafting a well thought out intro message to the influencer. Having a well-structured campaign brief and making sure that you stick to it. I've had that recently where we've had a brief, everything's all been agreed. I filmed the video and then just before we're about to post it, they completely changed their mind. So this can end up costing the business more money and obviously wasting time as well. Offering reasonable fees to the influencer to avoid time. If you're approaching a large influencer and you're a brand new startup, it's going to be very unlikely that you're going to have a big budget to be able to pay them, and it's basically going to end up wasting time, if anything. So maybe look to approach influencers that are within your budget range to avoid wasting time. Long-term partnerships I found would more than likely be more effective than the one-off posts, as I mentioned a minute ago. So maybe doing a series of posts over the course of a month, maybe one post a week for 4 weeks, or more recently, I've entered into like a 6-month contract with a business. So that means that my followers are going to see me regularly promoting the brand. And I think that can really help in building trust with the brand and the business too. Picking the right influencer for your brand and your target audience is really important. And I found getting a script written before anything's recorded. So say if I've got a campaign brief and I know what video I'm going to be filming, if I was to write a script before I start filming anything and then send that over to the business, they'll have a rough idea of what I'm looking to achieve and what the video is going to look like before I start filming. So this can save you a bit of time in the meantime. And lastly, and for me, the most important one is giving the influencer creative freedom. I think that the campaign will be a lot more effective if you allow the creator to have some sort of creative freedom when creating the advert or the sponsored post for your business. And yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Hopefully the insight was helpful. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask away.
Thank you so much, Max. That was super useful. You're like a can of knowledge, and congrats on the growth in the last year. So did you say you have 1.8 million across everything at the moment?
TikTok is 1.8. And then I really do need to start focusing more on the YouTube. It's just really hard. This is the issue when you've got like two startup businesses. I'm trying to do all the content. It is quite hard, but I'm trying to put some different processes in place to allow me to put more time into the other platforms. So I wouldn't say it's a small audience on the other platforms, but in comparison to TikTok, where I put like so much of my time, it is. So I think there's about 27K on Instagram and 6,000 or 7,000 on YouTube.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'm excited to get the content over to the people in a minute and get more questions. I can see there's a few people in the comments here who've asked a few things. So yeah, we're looking forward to having you back on. So thanks, Max.
Awesome. No problem.
Awesome. Right, that was really good from Max, guys. I thought it would be good to kind of now go into a bit of the business lessons before I bring up Chloe to give you guys the next section. I made a little presentation that I would like to walk everyone through, and I'll talk about it from the kind of the business side. I hope Max dropped a lot of stuff I'm about to say, but hopefully there's a few more things there that we can kind of share for you guys. Great. Cool. So as mentioned, BJ, CEO of the Purposeful Project. This topic's all around how to work with influencers in business. We mentioned in the event details that we wanted to get through a few things. One being how to develop an influencer strategy. Another one, how to calculate your return on investment and sourcing the right influencers for your brand. I'm going to give you some case studies of small businesses doing some good stuff. Give you examples of what my agency has done in the past. I sold in 2018, but the lessons still remain the same. Talk about resources that will help you find influencers and then give you some insights into alternative influencer strategy. So just for context setting, a couple of years ago, about 5 years ago, myself and a couple of YouTubers came together and we set up our own influencer agency and built a directory that tracked over 5 million influencers. We managed to win campaigns with Coca-Cola, Sony, Virgin Records, Polydor, and multiple agencies in the space of 2 years, 6-figure business, 12 employees based in Shoreditch. We then sold in 2018, and some of the partners are still involved in the business until today. There was a lot of lessons learned, a lot of mistakes made, but the insights, I hope, will be helpful to some of you guys during this session. I suppose something that's kind of interesting to kind of like outline from the get-go, especially for those of you that don't have an agency you can work with. I think a lot of small business owners should start thinking about their internal team, especially the head of marketing, even if it's yourself, as a bit of an influencer director and move like an influencer director. I think Max gave a great point. You don't want to just go to someone and say, hey, do this post for us and not have a brief. So briefing is like the number one thing you can do. So the way we operated, and I think you can actually take some of these notes and do it yourself in your business. We try to sit down and actually build out a scope of what exactly are we trying to achieve, put down the campaign ideas, highlight the responsibilities. So is there an editor that needs to provide something at a certain time? When will the influencers need to send content? And when is the kind of almost like do or die date that the campaign needs to be live by? So let's say you have a product that needs to be out for Black Friday, which is in about 7 weeks from now. Right now, you're probably thinking, right, in the next week, we need to get the creative going. We need about 2 weeks of outreach. So that takes you to like the second week of October. You've then got 1 or 2 weeks for production and editing stuff, if there's a big campaign for Black Friday, obviously. And then early November, you start moving to seeding. You start going, right, these are the stuff that the ambassadors are going to post for us. This is the one-off piece that people are going to do for us. And then these are the ways that we're going to start tracking. So you want to have links that people are doing swipe ups on that are actually trackable via Bitly and other providers. Obviously, that's an example of a bit more of a bigger campaign where you got 7-8 weeks, but obviously this thing can be done with 7 days, with 6 months. The theory always remains the same. You always want to allocate some time for scoping out what our key results are. So as a second stage of something that we've always done in my old businesses, and I do until today in all my other businesses, is have a bit of an influencer search. It's no longer good enough to just go, oh, we're going to pick Molly May, or we're going to pick whoever it is that comes to your phone first. It's very, very important to go, right, who are the best people aligned to our brand? Utilize things like hashtags to find out who's ranking high in your field. Have a look on TikTok. TikTok is a great way to kind of give you insights as to what's going to pop on other platforms before they do, and then build yourself a little search list. You don't need no fancy tools. Excel is fine, and you want to highlight probably in 3 sections. One is the really big people that are like your dream goal people. Second tier being people between 10K and 100K, and then the next bit being micro. Obviously, this is relative to different businesses, but again, it's an approach I highly recommend. Even if you're not talking or having to pitch it to someone else internally as a team, you should be building campaign presentations. You can probably skip campaign sign-off if you're working on it internally yourself, but have a sign-off date as to when you're going to kind of select your, A set of people that you're going to go to first, and then your B set of people next. You then want to move into what we call campaign operations. So it's no longer good enough to just reach out to influencers and wait for them to kind of do it as and when they please. You want to kind of have your negotiated prices in place, have a contract for them. You can download some really awesome tools on the internet now and contact lawyers to edit it up. And obviously reach out to me if you don't have the capacity, and I'll send you some examples you can use. But it's very, very important to really agree what people are going to deliver and when, because the influencer agency for many years wasn't regulated. And unless you're going for a big agency, oftentimes small businesses can find that they pay a deposit and the content doesn't come out, or the influencer gets a deposit and they don't get everything they want from the client. So having some sort of contracting or some sort of agreement locked in is super, super important. The 5th bit is content creation. So having deadlines and times when the content's going to come back so you can give appropriate feedback is super important. And then I alluded to this earlier, but posting and tracking is just as important. So how you track your reach, your impression, your engagement, and the stuff that are important for your campaign. Not every campaign is about reach. Some campaigns about clicks. So really figuring out what's going to be important for you and your audience is next on the list. Just to kind of broaden out everyone's opinion, I know everyone kind of always thinks of influencer and thinks of either 1 or 2 things, YouTube, or they think of Instagram. Something that the team and I developed quite early was kind of figuring out how to kind of like have a macro campaign within a campaign. So oftentimes small businesses, we don't have the abundance of Apple or Nike budget, but there's still some smart things you can do to test your creative before it goes out and becomes massive and you don't know what you're going to get. So yeah, on an Instagram seeding level, I've always said this thing about kind of seed optimization. So what you want to do here is create a couple of creatives with 1 or 2 people, not your whole set of influencers, and get them to test out different creative stories you want to tell before you go live with your wider campaign. It's nothing that's rocket science, but you'd be surprised the amount of businesses that don't do it. They spend months or weeks planning this big marketing plan, and then they just pump it all in the market, and then they don't have no way of knowing whether it's going to work or not. Once you get into the kind of process of having influencers you work with on a regular basis, I highly recommend A/B testing, just like you would on Facebook ads, just like you would on Google SEO, but A/B testing with your creators and finding 1 or 2 people who have an interesting audience size pool that you can test from, but getting them to run some polls, getting them to run different things in the weeks leading up before you go live with the big campaign. What does this give you? It gives you the ability to gauge passion points. It gives you the ability to collaborate with some micro influencers before the bigger campaign. And it gives you the ability to optimize and also show examples of what the standard is. So when you're working with other influencers, you can show them the standard and give them a creative license to go out and do what they need to do. The next place is YouTube collaboration. YouTube collaborations have existed for many, many years. There's obviously on one point where you can kind of like jump on challenges and kind of implement your product through that. Then you guys can create your own kind of pieces of content, which we'll probably call more goals, where you collaborate with people and kind of tell a story over a period of time. And then there's obviously the pranking side of things that lives on YouTube, and there's loads of other places that you can live. But I suppose there's challenges you can hop on already where you can work with content creators who already react to challenges by getting your product placed within it or your service placed within it. And then the next thing I really recommend is the storytelling element. So how do you work with people who tell more long form stories? Because then you get upside of them being collaborators. I suppose a couple of points here that are super important to remember. You want to shortlist your ideas. So engage 1 or 2 influencers as consultants, because oftentimes as small business owners, we have so much going on, and you'll be surprised what you could do if you actually ask one influencer, not to come in and just post, but can we pay you £200 a day or a fee to come and spend some time giving us insights on what's trending? Because you'll find the whole reason that these influencers are actually influencers because they have great base knowledge on all the platforms that they exist on, and especially the ones that they're most likely on. So for example, Max, he'll be a great person to pull in for a 1 or 2 hour conversation just on what's happening on TikTok in the last 2-3 weeks. And that will enable you to co-create with the influencer, other influencers that you can work with, and then get direct traffic when you're trying to put in stuff out. The benefits of this is that it's mutually beneficial. You're getting influencer involved much more earlier. Sometimes when people come out with a brief, it's like very rigid and it's not always to what the influencer wants to do. But you engaging with an influencer more as a consultant prior is a recommended approach that I've used many, many times with different clients. The next one, obviously, a localized influencer marketing is something that is very important, not just to me, but to a lot of small businesses. What you can do is start looking on Instagram and TikTok and searching your location and finding the top post there. And even without having to use big tools, you can really find very quickly, very, very simple and interesting kind of people that actually kind of index really high in your area. So for example, we ran a search in Liverpool a couple of months ago, and this influencer came up as a localized micro influencer that we can go and do something with. You'll be surprised the amount of brands that just don't even do the basics of like going outside London or going outside Paris or going outside New York. I think there's abilities for small businesses to actually win with small local creators and actually get some targeted insight and targeted growth in your area you're looking for. Again, the interesting thing with kind of having a venue engagement approach to influencer marketing is that you find influencers in the city that you're working with, you get a chance to filter influencer styles, and then you get a chance to do some VIP product testing or seeding because they can actually come into a store or come into a shoot or do something local for you guys. And it just makes for a more seamless posting experience because you both get the local nuances in the area you're in. So for anyone that's tuning in who's not London or from a major city, don't ever fear not think influence marketing is for you, not for you. It is still something that you can do very localized to yourself. There's a really good brand called Planted that I wanted to walk us all through that I think we can all take some lessons from. This is a brand that started in the pandemic. They literally every couple of weeks always kind of change up their feed. The lady who started this made 100K in the first 5 months after being made redundant and has now made 7 figures. And the key things to learn from this brand is it's really about storytelling. So they use very, very creative and simple ways to kind of just from nothing. You can see it now. Confidence back. So the founder's here telling stories, but she's got different users of the product to submit their own content of them utilizing their product. I think this is something that's we're going to see more and more of for small businesses. Doing product reviews is something that's really massive if you're not wanting to kind of pay big fees with influencers, but getting them to actually use your product and see results is a massive thing. Something that she's also been doing is getting the tagged up, even though the posts are low, but the tags have been going up and getting herself featured on different massive pages. So I'll give you guys an example shortly. So Hackney's Finest is a page that has over 400K followers. Natural Hair Lovers is a page that has 500,000 followers. This has 1,000 likes and it sends people to her page and just tells a story of what she's done. But you can think about it in your niche as well. Like aside to your influencer strategy, who are the bigger pages that represent your industry and how can you guys get featured? Some of these posts, when it comes to working these pages, can actually sometimes be at a similar rate or sometimes lower. We're working with a massive influencer. So I would recommend having this in your kind of strategy for 2021 moving forward. And yeah, the results, Planted started in June 2020. They've now got 43,000 followers. It's a brand that's gone on and done 7 figures. And that's something that I think everyone could be inspired by. Great. So yeah, that was my little bit of insight that I thought was recommended for everyone. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. If you guys have any questions from the gems I've mentioned there, please put it in the questions. I'm now going to bring up Chloe Taylor. Chloe, if you don't mind coming up.
Hello.
Hey, Chloe. So for the audience, do you want to give us a bit of context about you, your story, and the transition from, becoming an influencer to an entrepreneur and some lessons you've learned so far?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Chloe and I am the founder of Eartheia.com, which is an online vegan marketplace for fashion and beauty. So that's kind of like my day job. That's the business that I own. But alongside that, I also have a social platform now that I've kind of built up over several years. So I've got a small following on Instagram and then about 40,000 followers on TikTok. So nowhere near Max's, but yeah, we've still got a small platform to work with there, which is quite nice. And that really came about for me when I moved to California. And I just wanted to document like what I was doing over there, really. And I think because I'd lived in the UK beforehand, people were like, oh, wow, this is actually so different. And so my following started to grow from there. And to be honest, my niche has changed a lot over the years. So I think, if you are trying to build a niche yourself, don't worry if you're not sure what you want to do with it yet, because you can change that over time. So that's what I did. And now I post about vegan fashion and beauty pretty much across all channels. So that's me.
I love that. And what's been the change for you when it comes to kind of being a macro influencer? As I know you said the numbers are small, but as I proved with the planted thing, you don't need a million to be making money in this space. And you are collaborating with brands. You're being invited to go to talks, even at 17,000 on Instagram and 40,000 on TikTok.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it's all about the value that you give people. I think those are typically the type of accounts that have the better engagement level, and just building that kind of community there. So it doesn't really matter about the following that you have, I don't think. I think it's more about the impact that you can have. And the brands that I've worked with, whenever they do reach out to me, that's one thing that they always bring up with me, is the fact that, I have an engaged community on there. So I've worked with brands like Clearco, who used to be called Clearbank, Women's Best, TLF Apparel, recently Sigma Beauty, and Boldface Lashes. So there's quite a range of brands that I've worked with. But yeah, I'll touch more on that a little bit later. But I think for me, from a brand point of view, it is so nice when they kind of like schmooze you a little bit, and they're like, actually have done their research and go, do you know what, like, this thing that you did we absolutely loved, and the engagement you got on this was brilliant, and we think there could be a really good synergy with us collaborating together. So yeah,
Love that. So what would you say are the pros and cons of working with influencers, in your opinion?
oh my gosh, there's so many. I think, yeah, because I can see it from both sides. There's a lot. So as a small business now, so with my brand, we're just bringing out our own clothing line next week. So we're kind of going through the whole process of reaching out to influencers too. And I think there's so many different ways you can go about it, but I think as a small business, just be very careful, because you need to make sure that you're working with the right influencers to get a positive ROI, because you can very quickly look at someone's profile and, oh, they've got thousands of followers, they'll be brilliant, and then it comes down to it and they get like 2 comments in their comment section, and it doesn't do very well at all. So I think for any of the brands that are looking to collaborate with influencers, first of all, look at your niche and look at an influencer's content that they already put out and think, okay, is my product going to be in line with their native content that they already put out there? Because if people are engaging with that type of content, then the likelihood is they'll also engage with that content that the influencer produces with your product. So I think that's really important. And then also looking at, like I said earlier, their engagement rate and the kind of community that they've got. Like, they might not have like thousands and thousands of followers. Like, I know girls myself that I'm friends with that have like 10k followers, I think, on Instagram, and get over 3,000 likes on photos and will get hundreds of comments because they've built up that community. And you've got to look at those comments, I think, as they're almost like hot leads for you, really. They're the types of people that are so invested in that influencer that should they say, oh, this product is amazing, they're going to be the types of people to buy from, right? So I think that's really important, and finding the right influencer there is key. And I think as well, now influencers are demanding a hell of a lot more. I think people are getting tired of consistently getting asked to do collabs for like a gifted piece of content, because these people now are, even with, like I said, like something like 10k followers, people are able to take that as a full-time job now. because people can get paid from that if they've got the kind of engagement levels there. So yeah, I think influencers are asking for a lot more, because you've got to think about it. They've still got to pay rent too. You know, that they're looking at hair, makeup, lighting, camera equipment, and then the time that they're taking to film the content, and the idea generation as well behind that content, if they've got the creative freedom to do so. So I think as a brand reaching out, don't straight away be closed off necessarily to just being a gifted collab, because 9 times out of 10 I feel like influencers would get offended by that and you'd end up actually having a negative relationship with them. I think introduce yourself, give a little bit of background about your brand, and, you know, like I said, schmooze the influencer and be authentic. Don't just be like, hey, we love your content. Be like very specific. Be like, oh, we saw this campaign you did with this brand and we absolutely loved it. And we think you would be brilliant with us because of XYZ. And then I think they'd be more open to then potentially doing a gifted collab with you if you didn't have the budget necessarily to do a paid campaign. But if you do have budget behind you, then obviously just ask for the influencers rates, I would say. But yeah, I've had a couple of people try and DM us to do collaborations with us, being like, hey, oh my God, we love your brand so much. Yet they don't even follow us on any socials. So I think from an influencer point of view too, definitely make sure that if you're trying to collaborate with a brand, that you are already following them, because there's just no way that you'll get a collaboration out of that if you're not really. So yeah, I think that's it from the brand point of view. And also from an influencer point of view, there is a really good Instagram page called Influencer Pay Gap. And I think on there it's really good to kind of just have a little browse. So what they post on there is about kind of like horror stories really of influencers that have got a specific type of following, and it shows you their amount of following too, and their engagement rate, and what brands have kind of offered to pay them. So you can kind of look at people who have got a similar following to you and be like, oh, okay, that's how much they're getting paid, and their engagement rate's this similar to mine, that this is how much I should be charging. As an influencer. And I think as a brand as well, it's really good to look at, because you can look at all of the brands that are being called out for being crap really, for offering not enough, or the way they're collaborating and how they're reaching out to people. So you can kind of get a really good gist from that page as to how best to go about it. And again, from another brand and influencer kind of point of view, there's a really good platform called #paid. And I'm a part of that as an influencer, but essentially you put in all of your following and details and stuff like that, and connect your social accounts, and brands can find you there and then be like, okay, you know, you're posting content in our niche. And then you kind of have to pitch yourself to the brand as to why it would be a good fit, and then they can either approve or deny. So yeah, I think there's a lot of pros and cons, but I think making sure that you're being authentic, and making sure that you're doing the research to find the best influencer for you, and vice versa really. Even if you're in an influencer kind of position, make sure that you do your research on the brand. And whenever you're reaching out on usually through email, I would say is probably the best way. I know for me, I don't really check my DMs that much, so it's a nightmare to find any like collaborations that way. But if you want to get in touch, do it through email, and always make sure, whether it's to a brand or whether it's to an influencer, that you're letting them know the value that you can be adding by collaborating.
Absolutely. I love those gems. Love those gems, Chloe. I'm just going to bring up Max up to the main stage again, and then we'll start answering some people's questions. All right, then. Great. So we've had a few questions in, and this is open to both of you to answer. So Jessica Allen wants to know, how do you know how much to offer an influencer, or should you let them set prices?
Who's answering these? I can offer a little bit of insight if you'd like.
If you want, Max, go for it.
So I think it will be different for every influencer, and they're all going to set more than likely their different rates. But one way, before I had like a manager sort of doing that sort of thing for me, is there's a website which I cannot remember the name, but if you just go to Google and type in like how much to pay a TikTok influencer or Instagram influencer, and just add their like their handle or their Instagram name or TikTok name into this calculator, it'll give you a rough idea of the type of fee that you can expect to pay or that they're expecting to charge. Now, it's not going to be accurate, but it can give you a rough sort of idea before you even reach out to them in the first place. Like I said, it's really hard because there could be someone with 10,000 followers and they've set their rate to like £1,000 per post. And there could be someone with 500,000 followers and they've got a rate of £500 per post. So it could be completely different. But I think a simple sort of calculator like that can give you a rough idea before reaching out. I wouldn't necessarily let them set the prices. It depends what your budget is, really. I would say set whatever your budget is and then try and find influencers that would do the post within your budget. If the campaign goes well, then obviously that will hopefully increase your budget for the next time and you can move on to some larger influencers.
I was just going to tap onto that. I think the one I typically use is the Influencer Marketing Hub because it gives you their engagement rate as well. So you can kind of get a more accurate kind of like idea of what to charge for that engagement rate rather than just following, which is quite good. And then the page that I mentioned previously as well, the Influencer Pay Gap on Instagram, that's really good as well to see what type of rates people have for their specific following and engagement rate too. So I think, just doing your research and looking at all those different kind of sources first before you even think to reach out is the best thing to do, really.
Love that. I've actually put in a chat for everyone the Influencer Marketing Hub calculator and 2 others I found from Google search. So anyone can just jump in and have a look at that, what they've shared. The next question is from an anonymous attendee. How, as an influencer, will you set your rates, and will your rates depend on the brand in contact or one rate for everyone?
I think for me, it really depends on what they're asking because every brand is not going to ask the same deliverables from you. What I kind of like to do is kind of have like for myself anyway, just a price list for how much I would charge for a TikTok video of X amount of length. So whether it's a 30-second video, a 60-second video, a 3-minute video, and kind of like the same with Instagram and Reels. If it's going to be a 30-second reel, like how much would I charge for that? And then an in-feed kind of post with Instagram. How much do I charge for that? How much do I charge for story views? And kind of have that price list with yourself anyway. And then when a brand comes to you and they're like, okay, Chloe, we want 5 TikToks and an in-feed post. What are your rates? You can then just mentally go, okay, well, this is how much I charge for this, and this. This is what I'm going to go in with. And I think as an influencer as well, I would usually highball it first and go in with a higher cost because typically you'll find that the brands will try and negotiate that down a little bit. So I think that's the way I would go about it personally.
Max, any thoughts?
To be honest, I would say pretty much everything that Chloe said. That's why I didn't jump in there. I'd say, it's pretty much spot on. With regards to the rates, it depends, like I say, on what your following is, what your engagement's like. And I think having worked with like previous brands and stuff before, you can not necessarily use them as case studies, but say if I'd not worked with any brands before, but had good following, good engagement, I would likely be able to charge a better fee if I had worked with like the likes of Gymshark and other large brands as well, because hopefully they would have gone well. And that will build a little bit more trust with the brand that's reaching out to you. I'm not really sure what else to add there. I think that's pretty much it.
Love that. So we've got a question in from Sam. He says, what gets the best ROI in terms of types of posts, looking to maximize their bang for bucks as a small business with a tight budget? Also, guys, just a quick one just to say that if you guys can keep the comments clean, we've just removed John for the WhatsApp and email thing that you just put up last, so you guys can ignore it. Otherwise I would remove it. But the question, guys, is what gets the best ROI in terms of types of posts?
I think at the moment it's got to be Reels and TikToks because of the organic reach that you can get off of that. An influencer's in-feed post could be amazing. But I think the added benefit you've got with TikToks and Reels at the moment is it could still do amazing and then also be pushed out to thousands more people. So you're getting so much more bang for your buck there, really.
And I think another thing would be trying to make Well, first of all, giving the creator the creative freedom, because I feel like they're going to know their audience. They're going to know what sort of posts their audience are expecting and what would work well. So if you give them the creative freedom, then they're more than likely going to come up with a better post that fits well and resonates well with their audience. And hopefully it doesn't come across as an ad. So I've had really strict like campaign briefs before, and they come across like a proper salesy ad sort of post, and that's just not going to do well. The audience will switch off straight away. They know it's an advert. Same as when you see an ad on TV, you just switch it over. If the influencer can sort of match that ad or the campaign with their current sort of posts, then I think that'll more than likely work out well. And if it's a little bit more subtle rather than a hard sell, then you'll probably get better results, and the post's actual performance would probably do better as well.
Yeah, just to add on to that, Max, from speaking with TikTok as well, that's exactly what they say that you should be doing as a brand, is really trying to make sure that any ads that you do put out there with influencers, or whether you're promoting it from your own kind of like profile yourself anyway, that it should really be native content that people would just think is a part of their feed already, just to make sure that you're getting that view time and retention rate there too.
Oh, love that. Thanks, guys. Olivia's asked, are there any example campaign briefs we can access? I suppose in my first answer is everything is kind of bespoke and some stuff is NDA'd, right? But if there's any examples you guys can think of that people can find on the internet or that you can point them to, it'd be great.
If you take a look at that platform called #paid, they've actually got a dashboard on there of campaigns that are currently rolling out from big brands on there, and it's got the brief on there, so you can have a little look at that and kind of like adapt it to you really. And if you want to join the platform as a brand, I think you can, but equally you could just take what they kind of do on there and have it as inspo, and then kind of like draft your own kind of brief through email or DM, however you want to do it.
Love that. Love that. Where can people find you both away from this? Oh, I've got another question. Well, someone's asked if they can get in touch with lawyers. But yeah, I think we'll tackle that outside of this. Okay, cool. I think that's it. If anyone's got any last questions before we wrap, please share it in. I'm trying to go through all of the questions that we've seen, but I think we've tackled everything thus far. Is there anything that either of you wish to still share?
Don't think so.
Yeah, I'll have a think.
Trying to think of what we've not tapped on.
Yeah, we've tackled obviously searching. We've got engagement rates, we've got stories. There's been quite a lot.
I think one thing that I will say is influencers typically, from what I've seen anyway, will have multiple collaborations on the go, with all very different deadlines to them. So I think as a brand, like, you need to kind of plan ahead and give them at least 1 to 2 weeks, I think, to really like get that content done and submitted, just because they'll probably have so many other things going on, and you don't really want to be disappointed and going in last minute and being like, oh, by the way, we need this in the next 2 to 3 days kind of thing. Like, be realistic with it. And I think another thing that's worked well for me personally as well is by setting a deadline, but for review. So if they submit it then, and you can review it and be like, okay, this is exactly what we were asking for. Actually, there's a bit in there where your voice is kind of like mumbly and you can't hear it. Can you like refilm this, or the audio on this or something? So you're kind of collaborating with them in that sense. Still giving them creative freedom, of course, but just making sure that both parties are happy, and then any changes that can be made then can be made and resubmitted.
Love that. So yeah, I've got a couple of new questions that have come in. We've got, as a small business, what engagement rate is the lowest to look at?
I don't think there is like a specific, like, you should aim to have like at least 10 comments on every post, but I suppose it would be relative to whatever their audience are. I think it would be more to look out for the things that sort of, not necessarily red flags, but say if you're looking at an influencer that's got a large audience and they're getting literally like 1 or 2 comments on their posts, then that would be something to look out for. And if likewise they've got a small audience, but you're seeing hundreds of comments on the post, and obviously that would be a positive sign on the engagement side of things. But I don't necessarily think there's a minimum or maximum sort of like threshold. It would be quite unique to whatever that influencer's audience size is.
Love that.
I agree. Bear in mind as well that the bigger someone's following is, typically the lower the engagement rate goes. So it's not necessarily just kind of like a measurement for how good or bad their kind of community is, because like Kim Kardashian, I think she has like less than 10% engagement, but she's got huge reach. So it's all kind of, yeah, you just need to look at it as a whole really, and think, okay, well, what kind of effect will this have for me as a brand? There are tools out there actually though where you can check if people have fake followers or not. Oh gosh, can't think of them off the top of my head, but I think even like from Social Chain or something like that, you can have a little look online and it will tell you how many of their followers are real or fake, and you can kind of gauge from there what their true engagement is as to.
And I think another thing as well with regards to the engagement, don't necessarily just look at what people are commenting on their posts. I would check to see if that influencer is actually engaging back with the comments and make sure that they're actually engaged with their audience, rather than loads of people commenting on their posts. I feel like if that influencer isn't engaging and actually speaking to the audience itself, then that would be something that I would consider if I was looking to work with an influencer.
I think bear in mind as well that there are still influencers out there that are a part of engagement groups. So if you're seeing someone with, I don't know, between 10 to 20k followers, and they're getting like a few like 100,000 likes, but then they're getting like 500 comments, that's usually like a very strange ratio to see. Like it's quite rare. So I would just be double checking really, and yeah, definitely off of what Max said there, checking that they're engaging back, because if not, it could just be that they're a part of an engagement group and they're not really the kind of hot leads that you would want for if you were collaborating with them, like the people that would most likely buy the product from them.
Love that. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat. So we've got a question here that says, what is a great way to build courage to post? And it's kind of similar to the second question. So yeah, how did you get confidence to show up online? And then how do you consistently build courage?
I'll go ahead with this one. I think for me, and this is genuinely what really helped, is I just thought, how much do I care about Sarah from college and how much she posts, and do I really focus on the amount of likes or what she looks like or how many comments she gets? I don't analyze that. And I think we all get so caught up in it and thinking that people are like watching us 24/7 and waiting for us to kind of make a mistake, but they're really not, because people are so self-involved and so focused on themselves that they're really not bothered whether something is perfect or you make a mistake or something. I think it's an insecurity that a lot of us have kind of got within ourselves now for some reason, but really just don't give a crap about people's opinions. And I think you'll find as soon as you start, you'll notice that people don't really have opinions. And when you do start to get people's opinions and you do start to get people leave comments that aren't so nice, just remember that that's a sign of your success really, and that's you doing well. And it's certain people that are jealous that they're not getting that kind of reach that you are. But yeah, don't wait about and think, oh, I don't have the right equipment to do this, I don't have the right setup to do this, like, oh, this isn't perfect, I can't post it. Just post something, and the more you post, the more you will naturally get better at it, because you're constantly practicing.
And I think it's also important to be self-aware and understand what your strengths are. Some people are just really not comfortable in front of a camera, but they could be amazing writers, they could be great photographers. So I would say maybe start off with playing to your strengths. So if you're a great photographer or blog writer, you could really push the blog and the Instagram side of things, and then slowly build up the confidence on the video side of things. Obviously, I do mainly cooking videos. If I wanted, I could literally not be in the videos like at all. There's so many pages that have like millions of followers, and it's literally just, all you see is their hands and the food cooking. It's like an overhead sort of shot. So there is that as well. And I think over time you will build the confidence once you start posting consistently and start seeing the results and the feedback. And what you've got to understand is there is literally always going to be haters and trolls and stuff like that. Like, all I do is try and help people, yet I still get so many people just commenting horrible things on my videos. And it's just one of the things you've got to understand, and it's almost like part of it, and just try to ignore that and focus on the positive side of things. And don't get like too annoyed. Like, they could literally just be having a bad day and they're not a horrible person. They've just had a bad day. They put a comment on your post. They didn't mean anything by it. What they said isn't true. So yeah, I'd say focus on the positive side of things, play to your strengths, and be self-aware.
Love that. We've got time for a bonus question. So it says, as a startup digital agency, how do you convince brands to work with you or your agency? I suppose I can tackle this from the agency perspective. I think the evidence in your work and telling stories, they're two underrated things that people can just be doing all the time. So if you haven't got work that's been paid for, go create work. So early on in the agency, we literally found influencers that we wanted to work with, and we started telling stories. We found products and we made campaigns for ourselves, and put a little bit of money behind it. You know, anyone can go and get £500, £1,000, in my belief. You can do a couple of jobs, you can sell some stuff. And with that, you can actually make something. A lot of times people just need to believe that you can kind of deliver. And then part two is utilize the power of LinkedIn and Instagram to document the process of what's happening behind the scenes, and reach out to other bigger agencies if you're not having luck with brands, as they sometimes have spillover work that they're rejecting that you can kind of tap into. And actually one of our competitors, Go Agency, were one of the first clients who actually gave us work with Goldsmith University. So you'd be surprised, in that cycle, you don't just have to pitch to brands, you can actually work with, bigger businesses. So yeah, I hope that answers your question there. Don't know if either of you have anything else to chime in, but that's been so useful when I've built different businesses. Evidence in the work and building case studies, ASAP has always worked.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been asked as well by other girls that I know that are influencers, like, oh, what's a good brand to collaborate with? Like, what brands should I reach out to? And I always say, well, what brands do you actually love? Like, which brands do you actually buy from and genuinely are kind of like a fan of? Those are the types of brands you want to be collaborating with. But typically, if that's the case, you will already have products that you've purchased from that brand, right? So essentially, I think when you start out, just genuinely show your passion for that brand and create that quality content and the type of content that you would create if it was a paid campaign. And then when you do go to brands, be like, this is something that I've created for this brand just because I genuinely love them, and I would love the opportunity to do this with your brand or do this further with a paid collaboration, that kind of thing.
Love that. Right, guys, we've had a lot of information shared in the last hour. We are going to be releasing this as a playback video. There's still a lot of questions here that have been sent in that we'll try to tackle in a future session. As always, with the Purposeful Project, we like to tell people that you can kind of book free coaching, free mentoring, and kind of get involved with the platform and the brand. We do have on our website a membership section, which is free, where you can meet other entrepreneurs on the journey. We just ask for you guys to fill out a survey and join an onboarding call. So please do that. Next week, we're going to be announcing all of our events for October. We'd love to get feedback from you guys with what you guys want to see, but I think you guys are going to be excited with what we have. Chloe and Max, what are some interesting things happening with both of you before the end of the year?
So quite a few different things at the moment. We've just started off on like a 6-month partnership with Skinny Food Co., which I'm really looking forward to that. My Healthy Lifestyle mobile app launches at the end of next month. Been working on it for almost a year, so I'm really
hold on. We need to celebrate that.
And the same as well with my hidden veg sauce brand as well. We're going to be launching that really soon over the next few weeks. Awesome. Releasing another cookbook. What else? And next week I'm doing what would it be called? I'm not sure, but at the Arnold Sports Festival, which is one of the largest sports and fitness festivals in the world, I got invited to cook on the live kitchen there. So that's something I've never done before. I'm used to doing it in front of my phone screen in my kitchen. So doing that live in front of a lot of people will be an interesting but hopefully fun experience.
Come on. Well, we'll be tuning into all of that. And well done, Max. And yourself, Chloe?
Yeah, so next week we're actually launching a vegan and sustainable clothing line for the business, which is super exciting.
Wait, hold on.
And then I've got a few more live talks that I'm going to be doing. I've got to go to a couple of founders meals, which is bizarre to me, because I still see myself as being this 23-year-old girl, not like a founder, which is a bit wild. But that's super exciting. And we're also now in talks with India Reynolds from Love Island, because she's vegan, and potentially collaborating on bringing out a product line with her. So that's really cool.
Oh, well, guys, you guys are big inspirations for many people. You guys are literally pushing the curb and showing that you can be a business owner and influencer. Thank you for all the gems you guys have shared. Thank you, everyone, for attending the Saturday session. Be safe, be happy, enjoy your weekends, and yeah, sign up to the Purposeful Project for more awesome events and more competitions. Have a great Saturday, all.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. See you later.